Good morning. My name is Stefan Schmidt. You've probably seen me in some other videos or somewhere else, and I may look different because I have hair on my face part of the year and other times I don't. So this is what I look like right now. Welcome to the summer coastal policy class. I wanted to first of all say how interesting it is to have a really diverse group of students. I mean, I've been looking at your little bios. Some of you haven't submitted those, so please do that. But it's a great group because there are so many different backgrounds. I like the fact that we have some engineering students and some students in environmental studies and some political science majors, and that the interests that you put into those bios are pretty diverse, which I think is great. I hope you'll actually, I wanted to say, I hope you'll reflect in any of the discussion comments that you post, the specific interests that you have. For example, one of you said you were interested in part in how coastal zones and the military and coastal regions interact with each other, or what the issues are. And feel free and please refer in any discussion comments you post specific interests that you have. If you're an engineering student, for example, obviously the coastal zones are a delicious kind of buffet of engineering challenges, engineering questions, engineering failures, and also opportunities for fixing some of the things in the coastal zones that are discussed in the first 5 chapters of our one of our textbooks. The engineering ideas on how to control shore damage and how to slow down the movement of sand along the coastlines, in some cases had totally counterproductive consequences. So if you're an engineering student, you can mention that. Obviously, if you're an environmental studies student or somebody interested in the challenges of coastal ecological considerations, that would be great if you would mention what those are. I mean, coastal zones are, as with engineering, coastal zones are an absolute paradise of all kinds of wildlife, all kinds of marine life that actually is pretty crucial to the health of the oceans, the health of fishing, and therefore the health of each other, the integrated species that depend on all of those environmental conditions. And also humans, because humans consume a great deal of the product of the oceans. Much of that comes from coastal zones and coastal areas, and especially coastal marshes. We talk a lot about beaches, but I want you to also think about coastal zones as having a lot of wetlands. And those wetlands are where a lot of species that then migrate out to the oceans basically are spawned, where they spend their first few weeks of their life until they're big enough not to be completely swallowed by larger species. And so wetlands in the coastal zones are really very important for the health of the oceans. So I guess I just made that point, which is that you have the coastal zones and you have beaches and all of the ecosystems, human interactivity, and so on along the coasts. But the coasts are not a completely separate entity from what comes next, which is shallow beaches, sometimes steep drop-offs, and then the oceans. They all interact with each other in a very energetic way. So this is more and more important as climate change, regardless of how climate change has come about and who's responsible and so on. But important as climate change begins to have larger impact on the coastal zones, on people living there, and on coastal wildlife. And that obviously is the result of sea level rise, number one, and number two, the result of warmer oceans, which are perfect for more severe ocean conditions, more severe storms, and therefore bigger, more impressive and damaging storm surge, which is the giant waves that build up as the storms build up the oceans, and then those hit the beaches and hit the structures that are on the beaches and really reshape things. As I mentioned, reshape things. Also remember that the coasts are living entities. They're not frozen in place. And if you look back a few hundred years and certainly a few thousand years, the coasts were completely different in most places. I mean, if you go back far enough, there was no Florida. Florida was not actually dry land. It was not above sea level. The oceans were lower and therefore, or are lower, and therefore Florida has emerged. But as the oceans rise, you know, there's the question of whether Florida will eventually revert to where it once was. So we're dealing with a really dynamic part of our human existence and of nature that is constantly breathing and moving and shaping and changing. And that's what's really interesting about it. So look forward to working with you this summer. Try to keep up because, you know, each week we have a quiz over the assignments of that week. We have that at the end of the week. And you have to get through a semester's worth of material in 4 weeks. So it's on your shoulders. Thanks a lot. See you in class.